Well done for lasting this long at 6 o'clock. You guys must be exhausted. When I came to Sweat Life last year, I did 4 or 5 classes maybe, and I was just zonked by the end of the day. So well done for making it this far. So my name is Lauren Arms, and the session this evening is all about how to kickstart a career that you love. It doesn't have to be in wellness, but I work in the wellness industry, and I know that a lot of you are passionate about wellness, and so that's a great place to start. But this applies to anything and everything. If you want to find yourself a new job or build a business, then this is a session that's going to be relevant to you. So we're speeding through life, aren't we? We're surrounded by so much noise and so much advertising and different opinions and information, and we can't escape it. And so really, there are certain things that you can only see when you start to slow down in your life. And those things are, am I feeling happy? Am I feeling satisfied? Am I feeling fulfilled? And so the question is, are you really, truly satisfied? And that question applies to every area of your life. Are you truly satisfied with your body? Are you truly satisfied with the relationships that you have in your life? Are you truly satisfied with where you live? The simple day-to-day things. And you can only really start to answer those questions when you stop and pause and reflect on how you feel. And so the session today is about, are you really, truly satisfied with the work that you're doing in the world? So let's talk about that stuck feeling. Can anyone relate to that stuck feeling? We get it all the time. And you carry it around with you, and it can be a heavy feeling. It's not knowing what to do next. It's knowing that something's got to change, but perhaps not knowing just what that change is, what that next step is that you need to take to shift your life up a gear. And, I'm sure everybody in this room is about becoming a better person. And everybody in this room wants to improve themselves. Say yes if you're agreeing with me. Yeah? Awesome. That's why you're here. That's why you're here at Sweat Life. And so sometimes when you have that stuck feeling and you have this deep down feeling that, you're meant for something more, that can come up in the work that you do, in the job that you have, and it's a feeling that I have certainly felt before. So rewind 3 years, and that was me. That was me with that stuck feeling. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I spent too many days swiveling in my swivel chair in my office, feeling bored and feeling restless, and knowing that I wasn't in the right place. I wasn't in the right workplace. And so knowing that you're meant for something more is a feeling that a lot of us have. And it's thinking about, whether I'm ever going to figure out what I want to do with my life. And too many of us, to be honest, settle for mediocrity. Mediocrity in our jobs, mediocrity in our everyday lives. And yet, we all have that potential to be doing that something more that we feel deep down we want to. And remember, it's not about chasing the career itself, and that's what I realized. It's not about chasing the career itself. We're chasing the feeling that we get when we find that career that lights us up. It's the feeling of fulfillment. It's the feeling of, I enjoy what I do, and I feel like I'm giving something to the world that means something and is of value. And for me, I knew that I wasn't in the right place, and maybe you can relate. Will I ever figure out what I want to do with my life? Does anyone ever get that feeling? Sort of like, what am I going to do when I grow up? Damn, I'm already an adult. I need to know the answers to these questions. There's this insane pressure to find your calling, to find your purpose in life. And for me, it was stripping some of that back and saying, actually, life is meant to be enjoyed. This is meant to be fun. And so I'm going to start with getting curious. And when you start with getting curious, suddenly the pressure's off. It's not about finding the perfect job. It's not about finding the perfect career. It's just about getting curious. It's as simple as being interested, being intrigued, what lies around the corner for me. And so here we go. This was being curious for me. And it shaped my career like nothing else. So 4 years ago, I was living on a cattle station in outback Australia, 22,000-acre cattle property. And I just quit my job of 7 years. I was working for an industrial aerosol manufacturing company. Does anyone know what that means? Sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? I worked for a company that manufactured spray paint, and my role was international distribution. So I traveled to really exotic places like Papua New Guinea and Chile and Ghana and set up distribution partnerships. And I felt dissatisfied, and so I took a break and I went and worked on a cattle station. And I started to explore this idea of what's my calling? What's my calling? What's the thing that I want to do with my life? Where do I want to work? What do I want to be when I grow up? And I'd applied for a visa to live and work in the UK, as Aussies do. It's relatively easy to get a 2-year visa. You guys are kind enough to let us in and come and work here for a couple of years. And to tell you the truth, I was feeling really anxious about my future. I spent 7 years with this company. I knew it like the back of my hand. And here I was, waiting for my visa to be approved. I'd sold my car, I'd sold all my things, I'd moved out of my place. And so I packed my bags and I moved to London. And I didn't have a job when I got here. I didn't have much money. I'd sold my car. And I didn't know anyone, didn't really have a friendship circle. And I felt like a tiny little anonymous fish in a big ocean of opportunity, so there was excitement there as well. And so launching Well2Do, my business, a year after I arrived, turned into this exercise of trying to escape the corporate world that I thought I loved. So I arrived in London thinking I was going to climb the corporate ladder and find my perfect job. And actually, after a year, I looked at my director and I thought, I don't want to be you in 5, 10, 15 years' time. Can anyone relate to that? I don't want to be you in 10 years' time. I need to get out. I need to get out of here. And so suddenly, the fear of being stuck there in that job that I hated became greater than the fear of having to figure out how to take control myself. So the fear of being stuck in that job forever suddenly became greater than having to figure it out for myself. So I launched Well2Do, and what did that look like? It was a logo that I made in Microsoft Paint. Remember Microsoft Paint? Oh my God. But it worked, it did the trick. I designed this lovely logo, and I launched a WordPress website. I'd never done that before. Well2dolondon.wordpress.com. Got me started, and I paid my domain fee, and I kicked off the website. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I thought, I know that this wellness thing is going to be something big in London. I had a feeling, and I liked wellness. I was interested in it, so that made sense. And I got curious. I thought, eventually, this is going to lead me to my big business idea. I'm going to start asking questions. I'm going to start getting to know people and connecting. And guess what? It took me 8 months to figure out how to make a single cent from my business. And so I dreaded people asking me, what do you do? Oh my God. I'd change the topic at a party to avoid them saying, what do you do? I'm not sure, I can't really explain it. I have a wellness online platform. What's wellness? This is 4 years ago, nobody knew what wellness was. And so what I did was I focused on that feeling that I wanted to feel fulfilled, and focusing on that was what kept me getting curious and moving to the next step. And I persisted with meeting people, talking to people about my idea, if they understood what I was talking about. And so 12 months after the launch, and by this time I'd quit my job, I had my big aha moment. So I realized that I was interested in entrepreneurship and I wanted to combine the two, and so I launched the first Well2Do event series, where we brought together a group of entrepreneurs interested in starting wellness businesses, and so the legitimate business was born. And I learned a lot being curious. It forced me to learn and to make it work. I had to get uncomfortable on a daily basis, and really that is what getting out of your comfort zone and moving to a new stage in your career, whether it's finding a new job, entering into a new market, or building a business, is all about. It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so, you know, at times I wanted to give up. At times I got really down about things. And speaking of getting down, I got down to my last few pounds. And you know, I wondered at times how I'd pay my rent. I wondered at times if I'd be able to catch a train home. And I felt that sheer panic of trying to figure out how the hell am I going to make this work. And yet, the fear of being stuck there in that job that I hated, in that career that I hated, became greater than the fear of having to figure out how to grow a business and how to make it work and how to get my idea to start making money and generating revenue. And so, what are the questions that you can ask yourself when you're trying to find your big idea? What frustrates you? What winds you up? What gets you on your soapbox? What do you enjoy talking about? Want to do something different? Start digging deeper. Start asking yourself those questions that help you find out what you really care about, what you really will feel fulfilled by. Start there. So even though you might not know what the big picture looks like, and we're obsessed with knowing what the big picture looks like, aren't we? We need to know that we're going to have a security blanket at the end, that we know what the business is going to look like, that we know what the job is that we're looking for. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you have to step into that unknown and let it unfold. And honestly, you know, even though we feel safe in knowing what the final result is going to be, oftentimes it's just making a start and just taking that first step that gets you moving. And believe me, you figure out the how when you take the step and start moving towards the goal. So one of my favorite authors is a guy called Rob Bell, and his latest book is a must-read, guys. It's called How to Be Here. And he says, forget about step 25. It doesn't matter yet. What's your step 1? So you want to launch a business, you want to transform your career. What's your step 1? What's something you can do today? Is it designing a logo in Microsoft Paint? Is it launching a WordPress website? Is it launching the Instagram account? Is it talking to a friend about it? Everyone's step 1's different, but everyone starts with a step 1. Every successful person started with their step 1. And it's step 25 that stops you taking step 1 because you're so caught up in, but what's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like when this all falls into place? It's okay not to know. But if you take step 1, then you take step 2, and then you take step 3, and before you know it, you're at step 25 and you've learned a hell of a lot along the way. Is one of the reasons you feel lost because you don't know what's out there? It's a fair question. Sometimes you don't know what the possibilities are. You don't know what the company looks like that you want to run. You don't know what the job looks like that you've been looking for. You just know that you're not satisfied. And my answer to that question is, there's lots of things that you can do, but one thing that transformed my career was to start reading a lot. Reading books, reading articles, reading blog posts, YouTube tutorials, podcasts, but a lot of books. Mindset strategy, business strategy, how do successful people succeed? How do you turn into one of those people that you watch what they're doing and wonder, how did you figure out how to do that? Who do you compare yourself to? I think comparison gets a bad rap. And I say that because it's important not to ignore who you're comparing yourself to. If you're scrolling through your Instagram, sometimes you feel inspired, but sometimes you feel a bit jealous, don't you? Does anyone else feel jealous when they scroll through their Instagram feed? You think, gee, I wish I could live that life. I wish I had that business. I wish I had that blog or that brand. So don't ignore it. Don't ignore who you're comparing yourself to. Look for that person that you look at and you think, I wish I had some of that. But also look to that person who you look at on social media and you think, I could never be like that person. I could never have those things. I could never achieve what they achieve. I could never be that thin or that pretty or that rich or whatever it is that they have that you don't have and that you don't think that you could ever have. And comparison has given me insight into what it is that I really want in my life. And remember as well that it's an indication of what you really want. And that's why I say slow down. Sometimes you have to slow down to feel what it is that is triggering you, causing you to feel a certain emotion. And it's proof that it's possible for you as well. So if that person can achieve that thing in their life, it's proof that it's possible for you as well. So some of the things that I did next. Taking the first step has nothing to do with qualifications, experience, knowing how to do it, feeling ready, having plenty of time, or a shed load of money. Because guess what? When I started my business, these were all the things that I didn't have. I guarantee you. I didn't have the qualification. I didn't have a business. I didn't have an MBA. I had no experience running a business. I worked for an aerosol company. I told you that. Didn't work in wellness. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't feel ready. I didn't have plenty of time, and we say that a lot, don't we? We say, I don't have time. I don't have time to find a job I love. I don't have time to start a business. I don't have enough money. So the number one thing, guys, is that it's time to let go. When I was a kid, I needed a volunteer for this. Chris, can you be my volunteer? When I was a kid growing up, my brothers and I used to play this game called Mercy. Has anyone heard of it? Such a terrible game. Chris, come up here. For those of you who don't know what Mercy is, this is how you play it. You interlock your fingers like this. And the idea, we're not going to actually play it because it's such an awful game, is that I'm going to try and bend your wrist back as hard as I can until it really hurts you. And you're going to try and do the same thing to me. And at any time you can give up, right? All you have to do is say mercy, okay? So that's what the game is, guys. It's called Mercy. You voluntarily enter into a painful situation. You can sit down now. And at any time you can get out of the game, all you have to do is say mercy. Did anyone play that game as a kid? I had two older brothers, both 6'7". Can you imagine? It was really painful, and yet I still voluntarily entered into that game. And guess what? We play this game all the time with our thoughts. We play the game in our minds. And what I mean is that we hold on so tightly to the stories that we've been telling ourselves for years about not having enough experience, not having the qualifications, not having enough money, not having enough time, not knowing how to do it, not knowing what it's going to look like. There's so many reasons, aren't there? So many excuses that we use for not doing the thing that we want to do with our lives, for not feeling the way that we want to feel. And yet we all have the right to feel happy in our lives and to genuinely enjoy what we do and have a career that we love. So there's a simple way out. But yet we stay in the discomfort anyway. It's so weird, isn't it? But we all do it. We stay in the discomfort even though there's a simple way out. In the game, you say mercy. In life, sometimes it's as simple as just letting go of those thoughts. And not worrying about what other people think, because that's a big part of it too, isn't it? We're so worried about what everybody thinks of us, but guess what? Other people don't really think about you that much. It's kind of the truth, isn't it? You're so busy thinking about yourself, you're not worried about other people. So don't worry about what other people think, because the truth is, other people do not really think about you that much. They're busy thinking about themselves. And yet we let the expectations of other people hold us back from doing the thing that we love so often. So often. Sometimes when we say we don't really know what we're looking for, it might be because instead of getting in touch with how we feel about our lives, we're living according to other people's expectations. Does that make sense? Yeah. So guys, do not live your life to satisfy others. Spend it fulfilling what you desire in the core of your being and figuring out what that is involves slowing down and doing some of the deep digging work. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years, building my business. So it's time to let go of all of those false beliefs that hold you back and bury you. The excuses of not having enough time or not having money, because they'll always be there. There'll always be reasons for not doing it. There'll always be fear and uncertainty and doubt, which we'll get onto. So what are some of the reasons that you use for not pursuing your dreams? So when I look back to when I first started my business, here are some of the things that held me back. Here are some of my beliefs and what they looked like. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know how to sell things or create things. I don't know how to build a website. I don't know how to talk to a bank about opening a business account. I mean, there's lots of things, aren't there? I don't know how to, if it's looking for a new career, I don't understand that industry. I don't have any connections in that space. I don't know anything about the wellness industry. And yet I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and everyone else seems to have figured it out. I'm not enough. What if I run out of money? And I did run out of money. It was really intense. I had to move in with my boyfriend's parents at one stage. I was living in Chelsea at the time, and I was running out of money because I was investing in this business. And I was so ashamed of it as well. I was so ashamed that I was having to move in with my boyfriend's parents, and so I told people I was moving to the country. Because British people love that, don't they? Moving to the country, it sounds really lovely. And people would say, oh, that's lovely, moving to the country. I couldn't afford to live in London anymore. What if I ran out of money? But what if I have to stay in the job that I hate? That was worse. That fear was worse. What if nobody likes what I do? I used to, every time I would put tickets on sale for my events, actually that's the next thing. What if nobody comes to my event? It's like, what if nobody comes to my birthday party? It's that little inner child inside you that's worried that nobody's going to like what you do. And it's so normal. It's so normal. But these are the beliefs that I had about my potential to build a business. Who am I to have a successful business? Everybody else seems to have the right to have a successful business except you sometimes. Everybody else seems to have a right to have a career that they love except for you sometimes. And then I realized that maybe the opposite is true, because these are all just possibilities. They're all possibilities that maybe people won't like what I do, or that maybe I'll run out of money. And so I started to ask myself, what if the opposite were true? And those beliefs shifted. And at first they felt really uncomfortable because I didn't necessarily believe them. But that's part of changing that mindset and turning yourself into somebody who thinks like a successful person. So how does a successful person think? Instead of thinking, I don't know how to do that, they think, I'll figure it out. Instead of thinking, what if I run out of money? They think, there is enough for money for me. Guess what? There's lots of money out there. The world's full of money. It's got to be enough for us too, right? What if people don't like what I do? Well, I like what I do, so maybe other people might like it too. And guess what? People came to my events. It was amazing. What if my events don't sell out? What if they do? What if the opposite were true? What if all of those excuses and fears and doubts that you have in your mind were completely wrong? What if the opposite were true? And finally, who am I not to be successful? So instead of going through your life asking yourself on repeat, who am I to be successful? Why don't you try asking yourself, who am I not to be successful, and see where that takes you instead? So the second thing, guys, was it's time to make a decision. For me, it was realizing that I knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't have all the answers, but that it was time for me to make a decision. And so your insecurities and your fears and your excuses will always win until you decide to let them go. And if you wait until you're ready all the time, if you wait until you're ready for that big promotion or that big job that you've been waiting for, or to start the business that you've been thinking about for years, or to start the business that you haven't been thinking about for years because you weren't sure what it was going to be, then letting your insecurities, fears, and excuses drive the vehicle means that they're always going to dictate your decisions. And so sometimes when you're busy waiting to be ready, you're waiting to be more prepared, you miss the opportunities that are right in front of you. And when you think about it, I'll give you an example. You know when you decide to, let's use buying a Vauxhall Corsa as an example. You decide you're going to buy a Vauxhall Corsa and you decide you want a black one. And then for some reason, everywhere you look, everyone's driving a black Vauxhall Corsa. It's so weird, isn't it? Suddenly everyone's driving that car that you decided that you want. And that's the reality of what you attract through your mindset. And so if you start thinking, you know, I can have the job that I really want, I can have a successful business, I can be somebody who succeeds in my job, then suddenly all of those opportunities start to be attracted to you by the very nature of the way that you think. Another one of my favorite authors, Mel Robbins. She wrote the 5-second rule. Has anyone ever seen her TED Talk? She's brilliant. You should also look her up. She says it takes 5 seconds for your brain to interrupt you and say, you're scared to do that, this is uncertain, don't go there. It takes 5 seconds. And so the 5-second rule is this idea that if you're faced with a situation where you know you want to move towards your goal, but you're afraid to do it, and you're letting doubt or uncertainty or fear get in the way of you doing that thing, you've got 5 seconds to interrupt your brain from stopping you from doing it. And so you literally count in your mind, 5, 4, 3, 2, and before you get to 1, you need to do the thing. And it can transform the way that you think. So is it getting your CV up to date? Is it researching the companies that you admire or that you're interested in working for? You know, going back to what that step 1 is for you. Sometimes it's hard to even tackle that step 1. And so the 5-second rule is all about interrupting that normal tendency to feel afraid or to feel uncertain or to feel out of your depth and to say, right, I'm going to do this anyway, and I'm giving myself 5 seconds to get this done, and to not let fear step in and take control of this situation. And so I can't is actually just another way of saying that I don't believe that I can. And that's why mindset is so important when you're looking to create a change in your life. So what do you need to give yourself permission to start doing, being, or having today? Dreaming big is all about taking those first small steps forward. And so a small adjustment can have a huge impact on your life, and that's why you start with step 1. So if you want to feel more energetic, go to bed half an hour earlier, and just start with that as your step 1. If you want to get an important project done, start by getting your desk organized. It's a small task, but it can have a big result. If you want to find your dream job or build an incredible business, start by writing a list of 5 companies that really inspire you, or 5 entrepreneurs that really inspire you and motivate you. And those small steps start to multiply and become your new reality. So the third thing that I learnt along the way is the power of taking action. So we've talked about letting go of old patterns of thinking that hold you back in your life. And it's not a simple process, guys. It takes time. And that's why it's about slowing down and being in it for the long haul. So the second thing was deciding that you're going to do the thing that you want to do. Making that decision for yourself that you're going to show up and you're not going to let fear or uncertainty or doubt be the power in your life. And so number 3 is about taking action. So Tony Robbins says that knowledge isn't power, it's only potential power. We've been saying that quote for a long time, haven't we? Knowledge is power. And yet, when you think about it, knowledge really is only potential power. It's all about execution. So if you're thinking about getting a new job, it doesn't quite count, does it? If you're thinking about starting a business, it doesn't actually change your life until you actually do the thing, till you register the domain, till you think about the first step and do the first step. And so you want to change your life, you want to change your career and start something that's really fulfilling, then the most important part is about taking action. And what does taking action look like? I mean, there's millions of things that you can do. For me, it was about connecting with people, asking questions and not being afraid to look silly, not being afraid to say yes to something that you don't know how to do yet. Write, explore, volunteer in your spare time, be a beginner. No one likes being a beginner. Nobody likes being a beginner. We like being experts at things, and yet the only way to be an expert at something is to just start. And risk maybe being embarrassed at first. I did an F45 class the other day. It was so embarrassing. I'd never done a deadlift before. They looked at me like I was a stranger. But try and fail. Press the go live button. Don't wait until it's perfect. Apply for the job. Start today. And the most important part, have fun. It's about having fun. Life is meant to be enjoyed. So take action, but also have fun along the way. I knew I was going to be under time, so I'm going to say, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But also, it's been a long day, and so you don't need to sit through a 45-minute session of me ranting at you. But the final thought that I read this morning, actually, and so I quickly added it in to my slides, was life is like jazz. This is such a great quote. Life is like jazz. Much of it is improvised. We can't control the variables, but we must live with panache and flair regardless of what it throws at us. And it's just such a fabulous quote, isn't it? Because starting a business isn't easy. I've shared some of the low moments with you from my journey, but the fear of being stuck, the fear of being in a situation that you're not in control of, that you're not fulfilled by, can really outweigh the fear of having to figure it out and to trust that there are going to be variables, trust that there is going to be improvisation, that sometimes you do have to fake it till you make it. That's kind of what building a career that you love is all about, is not being afraid to say, I've never done this before, but I'm going to give it a go. And I'm going to see where it takes me. And I'm going to get curious. And I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to risk making a fool of myself. But I'm going to do it with panache and flair, and I'm going to say yes to things that make me feel uncomfortable, regardless of what's thrown at me. So that's it from me, guys. I hope you've taken some small nugget. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask, or are you all desperate to run off for a drink, which is totally fine too? Yeah.
Did you have any money at all when you invested into your business?
So I did the really silly thing that I would never suggest to anybody, of quitting my job before I was financially secure in my business. And as much as I would never recommend that to somebody, it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was absolutely forced to make it work. And even though I had to move out of my place and move in with my boyfriend's parents, which wasn't very glamorous, the thing is, I could have waited another 6 months, but as I said, the unhappy period of having to stay in that month and admitting to myself that that was my reality was worse. And so there was a transitionary period, and I had to do some consulting work and things on the side. But the thing is, you figure it out, don't you? When you're up against it, you figure it out. And that's why they say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because when you are launching a business, it's really scary at times. When you're going into a career where you have no idea what you're doing, it's really scary at times. And so, to answer your question, I honestly had moments when I was down to the wire. And that's just the reality of it, but also it pushed me to have to make it work in ways that maybe I didn't want it to be at the time, but as my business evolved and started to make sense, and where I am now with a team of 5 people and an office and so on, we got there in the end. Yes.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you. It was a great talk, really inspiring.
Thank you.
But I mean, you've spoken a lot about where you've come from and that horrible job that you hated. And I was just really wondering, but you've literally just started to answer my next question. How are things now? Was it all worth
Left
it?
you hanging.
Yeah, what's the company like? What are your thoughts for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, was anybody in the room at the Well-to-Do Summit last week? 2 people. Amazing. So I have a team of 5 people now. We run 10 events a year. Last week we hosted a summit, a conference, a half-day event, where we had speakers from brands like Lululemon and Headspace and Equinox. And what we do now, everything that we do is about helping people to build incredible businesses and careers in the wellness industry. So I'm also a business coach. I work one-on-one with female founders, some male founders, but mostly female founders in the wellness industry. And what my team do is they support companies in the wellness industry to recruit passionate people. So we help brands to find passionate people, and we help individuals to find jobs that they love in the wellness industry. So again, we work with brands like those that I've just listed to help people manifest their passion for wellness in either starting a business or finding a job that they love. And so, you know, it took 3 years for me to figure out what that business looked like. And as you all know, the wellness industry has evolved so much over the last 3 years. And so what we do now, we really couldn't have done 3 years ago. And that's another part of what's scary of starting a business when you don't necessarily know what you're doing, but you're willing to explore and experiment and get curious and figure it out. Is that sometimes things take off around you, and what you thought you had control of is actually sometimes a little bit outside of your control. And the eternal optimist will always trust that things are going to work out the way they're meant to. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Is anyone going to the yoga class at 1:45? Feel free to nip out.
Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you as well. That was awesome. You mentioned the what if the opposite is true, and that was really good. But it reminded me of a TED Talk I saw recently about fear setting.
Yeah,
where it's the same kind of
Tim
thing
Ferriss.
About
Wicked.
defining it, how you can prevent it, and your recovery if it all just fails. But that's a good exercise to do once a month or who knows how often, just like goal setting, you may have been here. But was there any other exercises or things you did regularly that would be not spoken already that you'd recommend?
Absolutely. So a great exercise, and do you know what I call it is flipping the switch. So what I said in my talk was, what if the opposite was true? But the whole premise is flipping the switch on something that you thought was true in your life, but actually could really possibly be false for you as well. The opposite could be true. And so it's things like, I can't do this. Okay, what if the opposite is true? What if I gave it a go and I potentially failed, but what if I figured it out? So my practical tip is to write those things down on a regular basis. You know, I journal daily, and I would encourage you all to do the same. You know, a lot of successful people say that they do a lot of writing, and part of that is getting it down on paper and doing that self-exploration. You know, finding out what it is that scares you, finding out what it is that you're most afraid of, but you know is also going to propel you forward. And an interesting thing that I heard the other day too is that motivation is complete garbage, because the things that you need to do to move your life forward are the things that are grounded in fear, uncertainty, and complete unknown. And so our brains aren't naturally wired to do those things. Our brains are wired to run away from those things. And so if you're not digging into it and reading about how to change your mind and getting real with yourself about how you think about life and journaling that out and writing it down, or talking to a friend, or getting a mentor, or, you know, for me it was investing in a business coach, then how will you ever get to the heart of it? Because we've been thinking these things for so long. And so, you know, we can't necessarily rely just on motivation. We have to get to the heart of, what am I afraid to do, but that I know is going to take my life forward in a certain direction that I want to take it in, and get honest with yourself about that, and then look at, is this real for me? Is this a true story? Or actually, am I telling myself something that's just holding me back? And the opposite could be completely true as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Cool. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice evening.